2 minutes past the hour. We have a lot of content to share today, so we're going to get started. I'm really excited that we have over 200 people, 250 people actually watching us live. So thank you all from joining from all over the world. Today, we have three awesome people. Well, myself, which is half
Good.
awesome, and two really awesome people that are going to talk about it. My name is Vlad Catrinescu, Office Apps and Services MVP since 2013. And I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Drew Madelung. How are you doing, Drew?
Great. Glad to be back on this one, Vlad. And yeah, so my name is Drew Madelung. I'm also an Office and Services, Apps and Services MVP and a Office 365 consultant. So a lot of the stuff we talk about, I help people implement in the real world here. And we have another guest here too today, don't we, Vlad?
Yes, we have a special guest directly from Microsoft, somebody that has a lot of experience with SharePoint that's close to our heart, but also with Microsoft Teams. Caruana, how are you doing, Caruana?
I'm great. Hello to both of you, and thanks for having me today.
Thank you for making the time for us and the community. For those attendees that do not know you, can you do a quick introduction? What are you currently doing at Microsoft?
Oh, sure, I'd love to. So I currently run the customer advocacy group for Microsoft Teams Engineering. It is my dream job. I get to work on adoption, certification, and training for teams and in the teamwork space as a whole. We also do all of the community and event management and really get to help people get value out of using Office 365 tools. I've been at Microsoft for about 8 years. I started in Microsoft IT, so I ran Skype at Microsoft and running adoption for all of the Office 365 services as we moved them to cloud. And I've been a customer, a partner, and now I work here. So the Microsoft ecosystem is my home.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So we have a lot of content today. We have a lot of things that were announced. Uh, let's get started. Drew, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit and make sure we recap where we kind of come to and what we're going to be talking about today. So a couple weeks ago was, wow, Ignite's already been, what week is it? 2 weeks ago now
2
since
weeks?
Microsoft
Yeah.
Ignite. It feels like it was yesterday. I'm still watching videos frequently. Watched another one this morning on security, so it's great. And last week we talked about OneDrive and SharePoint, so that is available for everyone to go see along with the slides. Today we will be talking about Microsoft Teams and Yammer. So we'll be going through the announcements around Microsoft Teams, and one of our goals here is to really talk about why these announcements are important to you, and not just looking at them from an announcement standpoint. So from the work that both Vlad and myself do with customers and the knowledge that Caruana brings with how we, from an adoption standpoint, that is our just as important as I should say, we can build all the nice cool things, but if no one uses them,
Exactly.
So we want to talk a lot about that. And then we have another webinar, so our last one in the recap series this week. So in 2 days from now, we'll be talking much more about security and compliance with fellow MVP Antonio Mayo. But to kick this off, we are talking Teams. I think one of the way I wanted to kind of start with this is just general conversation about Teams and Microsoft at Microsoft Ignite. And I'll kind of kick this off with some of my general feelings from it. And so I've been to every single Ignite and Ignite the tours and plenty of conferences, and it's always exciting to see the kind of involvement from the Microsoft team on where their investments kind of come. And I thought it was incredibly obvious and a great thing to see is the amount of booths and the amount of excitement around Microsoft Teams at Microsoft Ignite. I think one of the best things about Ignite is the Microsoft involvement, especially in the booth area. And I know Vlad and Garno being in that area, the amount of booths just for Microsoft Teams, we had a whole section. It wasn't just one booth. So I thought that was a great thing to see. We know that Microsoft Teams is the future, and I shouldn't say future. It is the hub for teamwork in Microsoft 365. But Vlad and Caruana, what were your kind of general thoughts on around Teams at Microsoft Ignite 2 weeks ago now?
Well, it was an incredibly exciting event. I think what's been interesting for me since, I always share with people that I've been in the product since before preview. And the reason I mention that is because it's a really unique experience to grow something like Teams inside of a company like Microsoft. I've had my own companies, I've supported other startups and what have you. So it's very much been like being at a startup inside one of the biggest companies in the world. And this year was just huge. I think we had 40 booths to talk about different things, and we showed up in the Azure side, we showed up in the developer side with all of our platform stuff, everything about devices and meeting rooms, and really showing it all come together. And the amount of enthusiasm was huge. But it's informed enthusiasm, right? And what I loved too was that I really felt like the adoption work that we've been doing for some time now, and that I've been doing for like 20 some odd years, had its moment. My sessions were full, so were the MVPs who gave adoption talks. People are understanding that usage and a great employee experience is really what this is about. So I just thought it was fantastic. It was really exciting, and it was also very tiring. I was pretty tired by the time I got home.
I bet. And something that is crazy, and I don't know if you've even had time to see it. I know it's 9 a.m. Or around 9 a.m. in Seattle, but Microsoft actually announced today updated numbers for Microsoft Teams usage. And we're now at 20 million monthly active users.
Yep. Absolutely. Yes, we
That-
are. And it's
that
really
is
exciting.
crazy.
I mean, when you think about our hockey stick of growth, and the things that make me even happier about that number, though, are the satisfaction scores that are coming back. And I love how engaged people are in giving us feedback on the product. We need to hear from folks. We do listen. We do review our user voice and all the various feedback that we get from partners and MVPs and Microsoft certified trainers and people throughout the ecosystem. So we're listening. And all of the features that we are going to talk about today that we released and announced at Ignite and our roadmaps are a result of people helping to shape this product. I feel like it's a really dynamic environment where the voice of the customer has so much power. And for me, that's really exciting, and I hope that it is for the people who are using the product and continuing to see it evolve. So it's nothing to shake a stick at, so we're pretty happy.
Yeah, I've seen in the consulting side, it's great because I'm helping people deploy Teams across the globe right now. I'm working with a customer right now that we're talking at adoption and not just how we roll out Teams, or not the technical side of rolling out Teams, but how we're going to bring things like the persistent chat, how we're going to bring online meetings to them and calling and all of the different app integrations to them across the globe. And this is something that we weren't even doing 2 years ago. So
That's right.
It's great to see. I think one of the bigger things that I thought just in general when we talk about the announcements coming up here is just the quantity of them, and actually they're not small announcements. So coming from whether you look back even 6 months ago, it's not like we're just changing the way something looks or adding an app. It's 30 plus announcements that are changing sometimes even the framework of how people are going to be working with Microsoft Teams.
Yes.
But it's great.
It is great, but I always want to stay grounded on that user experience because it can also be overwhelming. So I want to give a shout out to people like you who are doing this work to help people understand how to use Teams, because when it changes a lot, that introduces its own issues. But just knowing that these changes that we're trying to bring are ultimately going to deliver a more connected, more fluid, more empowering end user experience, I hope people will stick with us as we continue to evolve the product and give them what they're asking for. So yes, we know we're introducing a lot of change and we continue to change it, but there's a good reason for it, and all of you have asked for it. So.
And I think when we start jumping into some of these feature updates, we wanted to start out with what are some of the ways that we can talk about adoption, because we are going to talk about the features, but we want to start with how are people going to get educated in some of this functionality within and how is Teams helping bring kind of this knowledge and adoption to customers, to people, right? How, if I'm working within Teams, how am I going to know how to work with some of the stuff? And how can we, Carl, back to you, what are you seeing in kind of learning pathways and adoption side that was announced a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, Learning Pathways is one of my favorite projects. It's something I've been working on for some time, like a little last year, with my partners in SharePoint Engineering and in our documentation group that's called Marvel internally. And it really brings together the power of all the content we have on support.office.com, streamed directly to a tenant and a company's tenant through this SharePoint template. And what I love about it is it's customizable. So while you don't have to be in the business of keeping training assets up to date anymore, because you can use our playlists for all of the common Office apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, along with Microsoft Teams and Power Automate and Stream and other things, you can also customize it. So if there's a workload that you're not using, you can turn that content off. And you can also add your own custom content for like employee onboarding or how to order a new piece of hardware or something. So we're really excited about Learning Pathways. It's free. It is free to our customers and anyone can use it. And we announced its general availability at Ignite and also announced that in the first quarter of the next calendar year, we will support different languages. We will have our multi-language, multilingual support. And that's been a key request from many of our customers. And so, you know, I know you'll include those links at the end, but I'm really excited about the fact that being able to stream content that Microsoft is already building, these short videos that are task-oriented, that also responds to a key ask we've seen in the industry, that some people will come to an online class or a physical class, but a lot of people just want to learn something really quickly as they're doing it. And so being able to give them these quick starts and introductions and quick task videos really helps them as they're just trying to get their work done. Because at the end of the day, that's what most people are trying to do. You know, some people are like us and we're technologists, so we go deep into the technology, but a lot of people have a day job and they just want the technology to support them doing what they're already trying to accomplish. So Learning Pathways is near and dear to my heart. Really excited for its GA and happy to be supporting multiple languages as we get into the beginning of next year.
The multiple language thing is going to be great. I will say in all of my, since it's been GA, we've already rolled this out to one customer already. We had this installed in multiple customers previously right now, and it's great. We actually have budget starting to include this in almost in every single rollout for all of Microsoft 365, because we find it is and that's why one of the reasons I really wanted to start with this is it is such a crucial tool to make sure that adoption does work with all of these new things, and getting updated information in front of the end users is so important. So for the people kind of listening and tagging in, if you have not learned about Learning Pathways, this is one really to take away now that it is generally available. Go look at it. It's very easy to set up. It's very easy, intuitive to add and update information into it. So a really good one for a pretty big announcement, I think 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we were happy to, because you know, I was a customer of Microsoft once, and I remember all the different links that I used to have to manage my SharePoint on-prem environment back in those days. And, you know, I really wanted to do something about that now that I have the privilege of working inside Microsoft. And this kind of goes directly to the culture, our new culture also, of being customer driven. You know, I can bring these sorts of ideas from the outside in and get people to rally around them. And people were already thinking about this over in SharePoint and Marvel, and we just brought all our projects together as one to work across the company to deliver something like this that's really cool for our customers and for free. You know, that to me, that's the happiness, you know, of being able to do this. And then we did take it in Teams a step further. You're showing now the integration with Microsoft Teams, and part of this is the physical integration of the Learning Pathways SharePoint site with an app in Teams. Part of it is also designed to be inspirational. This app, which we released, and this is in its beta right now. We're still working on some innovations around it, but It's a really simple file that allows you to put in links to various SharePoint sites or other assets in your organization and display it inside of Teams. You can control who sees this app with policies from the modern portal. So you could have one version for your information workers and a different version for maybe people on your manufacturing floor. And we really wanted to show people how easy it is to bring these kinds of experiences together. I know for sure that if someone has to click out of Teams and go into a browser window to learn something, I've lost a part of that audience. And so I really wanted to bring the knowledge inside of the Teams client and also show other people how they could use it to bring their intranet inside of Teams. This is part of the vision of Teams and SharePoint. SharePoint obviously gives us all of our fantastic file capabilities, SharePoint and OneDrive, but the modern internet sites and the modern communication sites look beautiful inside of Teams. And so being able to pin these individual pages in ways that give people easy access to the knowledge that they need is, we think, really helpful for that end user experience. So you can go and check out that app. You can download it for free off of GitHub. We do have a couple known issues with it that we're working on, but I anticipate this is going to go general availability into the app catalog, sometime in that next quarter, after the turn of the year. So really love demoing this because I like to show how everything comes together in Teams, which is kind of part of the theme you'll see in some of the other announcements that we made.
Hey, Caruana, I have two questions from the Q&A around this. Hopefully you can help me out. First of all, will the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways be available in the GCC as well?
Yes, it will, as a matter of fact. We just finished some tests. Rima Reyes is my team member. We do all of the government activation work. She just finished some tests and was able to deploy and use it within a GCC. That is in standard GCC. We need to complete our tests for GCC High and DoD. So you can look forward to announcements on that during our Washington, D.C. event in February. We'll be there doing a large Microsoft Ignite the tour, and we'll have a specific session on learning pathways and our adoption tools. So we'll make more announcements there and in our driving adoption community. But so far so good. We haven't run into any known issues. So I'm hoping that the rest of that testing will go well over the course of this coming month, and we'll be able to release.
Awesome. And another question, this is about kind of keeping it up to date. I understand that it's something that's continuously invested in, but if a new feature launches, let's say in Teams, how soon will the associated content in the learning pathways be updated?
Well, it's a constant stream. We're updating content every week with new features, and so that content automatically streams into the learning pathways environment. You are in charge of whether it's on or not, so you can turn information and playlists on and off. And all of the streaming updates respect any changes that you've made to the experience. So if you've added playlists, if you've turned off things, we won't turn them back on. All of your own playlists will be maintained. We do have a published quarterly update schedule, but that's just to give people some insights into more of the feature updates we're doing in the solution. But the content, usually there's about, for a large feature like private channels, we launched that content at the same time private channels went general availability. Sometimes there's a 3 or 4 week delay, but for tier 1 features, something like private channels or some of the other announcements you'll see basically happens at the same time.
That's awesome. Thank
yeah,
you.
that's all because
That's
of our
crazy.
Marvel team. Yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy. And that's why we wanted people to have access to this versus you having to do all that work.
Yeah, I've built some LMS solutions that like similar to what you said, Caruana, with on-premises stuff.
Yep.
Like building links and search web parts to highlight everything back together, and that was fun. So
it was fun, but I'm glad I'm doing it different now.
Yes. So you kind of segued us nicely because we want to talk about some of the announcements in here, and the first big one I'd say is probably the I don't even know how to caveat this one. It's big.
Yeah, it is
this
big.
is one that has been very important. I would say it was the #1 user voice for a very long period of time. We knew this has taken a lot of work internally for the architecture, for the reasoning around it, but private channels, it's live.
Yep, it is live. It's very exciting. We're really, and I should probably put $1 in a jar every time I use the word exciting, because I noticed that I've been saying it a lot, but it's genuine on my part, right? I'm thrilled that we got this out the door to people, because the need for targeted and focused conversations inside a team with a subset of team members, as you mentioned, is something that was on user voice for a very long time, and it is now available. And the ability to have that functionality inside of the client will also help us address issues of team sprawl. Everybody's familiar with SharePoint sprawl. Teams had the potential to go that way as well. But now with private channels, you don't need 2 teams to have your leadership team or your HR team alongside the departmental group that you've created, or a cross-organizational team, which of course are our favorite kind, because we think it breaks down barriers and brings people together. But there's still sensitive topics like hiring or budget that in any project you may not want for the full audience of that team. That's the purpose of private channels, and we're very excited about that. As I mentioned, there is support and training documentation out there. On my show, Coffee in the Cloud, we'll be releasing an interview with Roshan Ramasan, who is the architect and the lead of the engineering group inside of Teams that created private channels. So I'm really excited to get that interview out, as well as some use case videos to help people understand how to best use private channels. But
And I
they
think the
are a great
biggest,
thing.
yeah, and I think the biggest takeaway that I've been talking with customers about, and once it was G8, I already emailed a bunch of people to let them know, because I think awareness around this and how we educate people about when to use them and where they really provide value is incredibly important, because to your point of helping with team sprawl, that's huge.
Yeah.
But there are caveats in that, especially if you're a team owner, kind of the concepts of what you can and can't see, and it's almost like a kind of best practices for managing private channels as a team owner, right? You're responsible as a team owner to control what's in that and provide, but then on our end, like for people like us, it's how do we educate the team owners for what these are, how they can use them, and how do we roll them out?
Yes, exactly. That's very important. And one thing I'll note there is Roshan gave an excellent overview of all those issues at Ignite, and that deck and his session are available online now. I encourage folks, excuse me, to go and review that. We'll share that link with people. But, being able to understand those best practices is important, especially from, an administrative perspective. But I encourage people to, get started taking a look at those things. And there are other features about this that will come in the future. I saw a question come through via chat about being able to convert public to private and things of this nature. There's a lot of those types of requests that are coming right now, and more to follow.
Yeah, and great. I think this, for me, if I had to take probably one of the most important announcement that we're going to have end user impact that we will probably see, but I should say end user and administrative impact. Some of the things we're going to talk about now are very end user centric and not necessarily administrative impact, but for the people listening and tuning in later, this does affect the IT team and the end users. So all across the board, this is a big release, a big announcement, and getting your hands on playing with this and understanding how it works and how we're going to educate everyone on to use it is a really important next step to take away from this.
And we're already seeing a tremendous uptick in people deploying and using private channels, right? And so, the need was clearly there, and we're seeing people use them, and yeah, hop on in.
And then once you build a private channel, what if it's really important, right? What if it's
right? Then you can pin it. I love pinning. Pinning is so helpful to me. One of the things that, is a transition for using Teams is your information flow. If you're anything like me, you had a lot of rules in Outlook, or you had different folders that you highlight or things of that nature. Now this ability to pin those important channels and I encourage people, pin the ones you're working on that are important to you today, and then as your work changes, as new channels become important, you can remove the ones that you're not working in and pin a new one, where it puts it up there at the top of your pane and gives you the ability to hop right to that channel, especially since we advocate larger teams with more channels as opposed to a lot of small teams. This becomes a really fantastic way to help organize your information workflow. Because
Yeah,
Teams is like any social application. It's not designed for you to have to read everything. I really want people to
exactly.
understand that that's not what you should be striving for in Teams. Use @mentions, pin the channels that are important to you. Use that activity pane and look at that and filter. These things are really important to switching your workflow into Teams.
Yeah, what you don't want to get stuck in is, and I've been at the beginning when we started rolling out Teams and internally and helping people, is you get this need to, like, I want to, if it's bolded, I really want to go see what they're talking about, or like just kind of distracting yourself to go just browsing Teams almost in a way. And the concept of channel pinning really helps you concentrate a little bit more on really what's important, and really some of that etiquette that you were talking about, Caruana, with that mentioning and controlling that it's really important to control that flow of information. And this is a way that you as a person, someone
Right.
working with your information, it's just easier for you to maintain. And you don't have to, you can stay more in the context of where you're trying to work.
Absolutely. It's an important thing, and I think people maybe don't think about that enough, but, the @mention is an important way of pulling someone's attention. At this point in my day, if you haven't @mentioned me or I haven't followed that particular channel, I'm probably not going to see it. Most of the time, I don't have a lot of copious free time to go read random conversations, so I stay focused on the things where my input is required. And then there are some other channels that I do monitor for new information, but it really helps me with my workflow.
Well then, because what you're doing, it sounds like you're just multitasking, right?
I
So
am. I
how
am
else can
multitasking. Look at this. Look at this. We're just flowing right along. Multi-window chats and meetings. Oh, so many people have asked for this, right? Being able to go and look up information in Teams while I'm in a meeting, working in that multi-window experience. It's just necessary today. And especially I think in the Teams client, the way Teams works, the way that brings information together. Multi-window is a significant improvement, and we were very happy, and people seemed excited once again to know that we're working on this and going to be delivering it.
And I will say this, for me, what I've been talking with customers, that the way I like to talk about this is a lot of people are still transitioning from Skype, and the way that they work in Skype today, and they already had that concept of multi-window and multi-chat available to us. So the way I've seen this from an adoption standpoint is really letting people know, like, when this starts coming up, like, we're going to be able to interact very similar to that you were today. And
Yes.
we don't necessarily want to, like, tell people to multitask, obviously, but especially when you're in a meeting and someone messaging with you on the side, that kind of an experience that we've been used to in Skype is going to be a nice addition.
Yes, yes, it is. And I do encourage people to try to keep those multi-windows to a minimum, just in the sense of, it can lead to a lot of context switching and, fracturing of your focus. But, people can figure that out, and do what's comfortable for them. It's not about us dictating to them how to work. We want to support their natural ways of working. And Roshan talks about this a lot with regard to private channels and other things that the Teams and Channel group are working on. It's definitely about us supporting your working style versus the other way around, and delivering improvements when we can. All right, and that means bringing information together, like you're showing here with these message extensions, right? This is a fantastic ability to bring information into the context of a conversation. And so again, I'm not hopping out to a web experience to answer a poll. I'm not even having to pin it using a form, which is a perfectly fine way to do it. I can actually build it right into my conversation, so people are seeing it in context of everything else we've been talking about, right? Just like we did right now with your move to that slide. This is what we want to have happen in that digital workspace, where there's a flow to the information and the different types of information you might be interacting with as you work with your team members.
And I think so the two to highlight that for the new messaging extensions that I want to talk about or let's say are polls and surveys. So the polls and surveys are messaging extensions that will be coming that you can be directly in line and start a poll or trigger a survey. I think a good example, I mean, Facebook Messenger has something like this. Other tools have extensions like this. It can be as simple as, hey, it's happy hour. Which would you like to go to, restaurant A or restaurant B?
Yep.
And you can get a quick, I mean, you can take it for that kind of questions or even have it more formal. So those polls and surveys will be two of the extensions that you'll be able to work with directly inside of your messages.
Yes, we think that that's going to, we see a lot of usage around polls in particular for things just of that nature, and even for things as simple as meeting times, where you're going to go get together, preferred dates for an offsite. There's just so many use cases for polls and these types of message extensions. And just know that everything we're doing is almost like a platform play in the sense that it is the beginning of what we're going to be able to deliver. So I know that we'll deliver additional message extensions over time.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think those are some of the main core. We're going to probably go a little bit quicker through some of the next ones because those are the ones where I feel like we're end user impact, like customizing that experience to them. But we're going to jump a little bit into actually managing some of managing your conversation. So
Yes.
We talked about being a part of the conversation and being inside of it now. Shifting gears a little bit, we now have the ability for better integration between Outlook and Teams. And I think the big thing I like to highlight for this one is it's nice to see things coming together.
Thank you.
Outlook is still very, very important. The big takeaway is Outlook is still pretty big king and in a lot of applications. So, but Karana, you can speak to how these things are kind of coming together now.
Yeah, I want to make sure that people understand we have zero intention of killing email. People say things like that. I don't know. They're cute, I guess. But that's not where we're coming from. People are going to talk in email. People are going to talk in Teams. But if you have that situation where you're onboarding people to Teams and what you're finding is fragmentation in your project, right? This is one of the things that really makes end users crazy. When you have a project and you're working in Teams, but someone is having another conversation about that project in Outlook, being able to easily transfer that over to the team so that everyone can see it is an important capability. So again, that's connective tissue between the workloads in Office 365. And whether it's Outlook or SharePoint or OneDrive or Forms or, Power Automate, all of these things are coming together to express themselves inside of that Teams client to reduce that context switching, to bring things together, to have transparency for all the members of that team. That's what's important. So we want people, and we know people will continue to have those conversations in Outlook, as well they should. But when it's appropriate to bring it over, let's make that simpler. Let's make that more full-featured. And that's what the Outlook team has done.
Awesome. Thank you, Karana. Vlad, was there I know that you've been monitoring the kind of the chat there. Is there anything coming up that we want to take a pause on? Are there any questions from the audience here?
Sure, yeah. So let's go over some questions. First one, and this is kind of a pretty niche one, but we're going to try. So there's been a conversation about e-discovery with private channels.
Mm-hmm.
I've already shared the docs, whereas and kind of to give some backgrounds if for the attendees that are not monitoring the Q&A like I am, because private channels basically creates a new SharePoint site collection of which you're not automatically an owner. There's just a special procedure that you have to follow in order to it's just a PowerShell script that will add the persons as a site collection admin, and then you can do a discovery on them. But it makes it that is not automatic. There's still a task that you need to do between private channel creation and it being available into e-discovery. Now the question, Karana, do you know if it will be in the roadmap for those private channels to be automatically included into e-discovery without any actual intervention in between?
I see what the question is. Yeah. Yes, it is. And for those details, I would refer to Roshan's presentation in terms of the timing on it. We are super committed to security and compliance and making that an easy flow, while at the same time making sure that we maintain the expectations of privacy that private channels bring to the table. So the fact that we support this via PowerShell, pretty much our workflow has been the things that we support at the beginning via PowerShell, make it into the user, to the UX for the modern portal as an actual, feature, if you will. But we also know that a lot of our IT admins, especially in large organizations, manage their tenant via PowerShell. So having that capability first is always what we want to deliver. So you can look for that to be a part of the user experience in MoPo later. And so I would have to take a look, and I can find for you the date for that.
Awesome. Thank you. A question which I'm not sure I understand, but maybe you or Drew will. So does the new messaging extension work in a one-to ad hoc meetings or a team meeting created via Outlook, just like you can do it in Skype?
Yes. Yeah. So the team meeting created via Outlook is identical in 99% of the respects to a meeting that you create inside of the Teams client, just a little switch there. So the meeting experience isn't any different no matter where you create that meeting. And the ad hoc capability, again, that will be an addition that will come later on.
Awesome. Another one. When will, and I think Drew might have a slide on the roadmap with the times, but if we don't, do you know when the Outlook integration will be available? Just a ballpark?
Next quarter, after the turn into the new calendar year.
Okay, so by March 2020, let's see, to play it
Yes,
safe.
exactly. And those dates and everything can be checked both in the slides that we have, but also on the main M365 roadmap. I really want to encourage people to use that site because that's where all of the official features are shown for Office, for M365.
Awesome. That's it for the questions now. Let's move on. I see that we have about 20 minutes left and lots of content left to talk about. So I'll still answer some of them in writing.
All right, so Connor, ready for a fast 5 minutes here to get through some of these good ones?
Yep, let's do a flash round. That's what I usually call these.
I like this. All right, so next one, Yammer. Right, so we'll hit Yammer bigger in the future. So I'm going to leave this here, but we're going to have a Yammer app coming. Right, that's a big addition. Look at it on the left. You see it on the left side. It's a big app. So we're going to hit Yammer coming up here in a few minutes. But what about meetings? We have two new things, or a couple things here. We'll start with live captions.
Absolutely. Talk about inclusivity in meetings, right? Being able to live caption that. This is something that I even use in our own internal meetings. In a global company, more people than you know have English as a second language, and it's really helpful to be able to have those live captions going during your meeting. So we're thrilled about that.
Yeah, well, as someone who works in global companies, this is going to be a very helpful thing. One thing I'd like to highlight in this little demonstration here is what are they doing? They have video on. Just want to make sure, just throwing the awareness out there that within Teams, I know we're not doing this webinar, but take advantage of the video capabilities. It really does make your meetings a little bit more effective. And it's just a quick plug there.
It is. Please be a video on culture. Absolutely.
It works. Difference. And because when you're on video on, you can have new presenter roles. When you have presenter and attendee roles now, so you can actually be a little bit more subjective, I'm going to call it, or control for managing your meetings and who can present and who can't. So I can be, me and Caruana can be one. I can be like, I'll take these slides, Caruana, and then take over from there. A nice one is around task management. So this is one where I spent a good amount of time at the booth over at Ignite to talk about this one, because I think this was a really nice enhancement that brings together to-do, planner, and Outlook tasks all into one.
Absolutely. Tasks and teams.
So very, very
cool. Shop.
And then actually, Caruana, this one, and do you have any, this is also for next year, I believe? I think is on the roadmap.
That is correct. Yeah. In March, there will be a couple different releases starting in next quarter in 2020.
Awesome. And then the great thing about this, just to make sure you have, again, it's on the left, unifying our tasks and teams, but it is going to include your Microsoft To-Dos, which if you're not using To-Do, please go try it. The My Day functionality is fantastic. And the Microsoft Planner tasks, and then the Outlook tasks all in one spot. It's so cool.
That's going to be awesome. No more. We still have,
Yeah.
I think SharePoint tasks, which I don't think they will become here ever, but it would be cool if SharePoint project even flow in the future. All of your approvals would all be in one place, but it's a good starting point. It's an amazing starting point.
Absolutely, and all of this is powered by the tasks, what we call the tasks fabric coherence work that's happening inside Microsoft. It's a very large project to bring everything into that substrate, and from an engineering, the engineer in me loves this project because of all the smart people who are on it, bringing that together in a much more cohesive fashion. So, you will definitely see more coming from this over time.
And when you're talking about rollout, there were a couple management options that did come out. The Microsoft, the advisor for Teams, I think Karna, you probably have a little bit more on this one than for me. So I really would like for you to talk for a second on this.
Oh yes, absolutely. So this is another one of my projects that I'm super excited about. Myself and Brandon Bernier have been working on this for also about the same year. Advisor for Teams will automate the creation of a team and a plan for the deployment and adoption of Teams. And why that's important is because while you may want to delete and simplify the plan, this gives you visibility into all the things that you should do to enable, for instance, chat and channels and meetings, at a very basic level in your organization. And we built this automated process that will deploy a service management team inside your Teams ecosystem, and then it makes a planner for you. This planner is a beautiful thing.
It's
now,
great.
You can go and download my project file or my Excel sheet of all of those tasks, but using this instead gets it in Planner, and then you can assign it to people. There's checklists for each task. There's links for all the documentation. I'm really proud of this work, and it's just, again, a beginning of the types of plans and templates that we'll be able to deliver through this platform enhancement.
And one of the takeaways for people listening in, what I've told people is, even if you are in the middle of deployment, or even if you're kind of past deployment and you're worried about or questioning adoption, still deploy this and look at the plans, look at Planner, and it might show you something that you missed. I think that's a really good point that I've seen is even someone who helps roll out Teams, looking at that, I'm like, wow, I kind of like that approach too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Super, super, super cool.
Thank you.
That will be available. We're going to put a link. A lot of people are asking me for that. We're going to put a link when we send the email with the resources after.
Yes,
Perfect.
Absolutely.
We also have, on the admin side, we have a couple things in the admin center. So we now have the app catalog in Teams. So we are able to manage and view all of our different apps in a much cleaner way.
Yes, and it gives you more granular control. And we want to encourage people to at least have on all the Microsoft delivered and featured apps that we have in the app catalog so people can really have a more productive experience. But maybe there are some other third-party apps that are popular in your environment, and then you can enable and disable those as you see fit. And the experience is much better than what we started with. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and I will say the most common thing I've seen is on rollout day one, or however that starts, is all the Microsoft apps are, make sure that those are all enabled. Please don't turn those off. Those are completely fine. I ended up with a customer the other day that had the website app turned off, and we were trying to bring learning pathways into Teams, and we're like, why did it? Like that didn't work.
Why is it turned off? Yeah. Well, and it defaults to secure websites, so people won't be able to pin a website that isn't already have some security on it. HTTPS is a requirement. So.
Exactly. So a little bit of awareness. So I think that's a good one for managing and getting more granularity, because the extension side of Teams is big. As far as the admin center, we also have Teams rooms, more capabilities inside of Team rooms. We actually have managed Team room, which I can talk about here, but the ability to more easily manage your Teams rooms inside of the Teams Admin Center. I'd say this would be a very nice one. I don't have a ton of customers fully in the Teams room yet. I think this is going to be one that for the people that are in Teams rooms, this is a great one. But we are seeing with the addition of new polycoms and new devices and things like that, team rooms become kind of more of the norm, or building new buildings towards it versus like as like almost like a PC refresh, right? When you're doing a room refresh, it's okay, what device do we buy next and how are we going to manage it? So much easier capabilities inside of Teams. On the Power side, so it's been great hearing you, Karen, want to talk about Power Automate, and we also now have, there's additions in Power Automate that are coming into Teams, but we also have Power Apps coming right inside of Teams as well. So
yes,
we talked about Teams apps a little bit. The ability to grab an app and publish it, or sorry, grab a Power App and publish it as a team app is also now coming as well. And then once you do that, or let's say if you didn't want to have it with the apps standpoint, you can also now pin it. So following up with this concept, I think to highlight these is things are coming, a lot of these announcements are bringing things together, right? So if you even think about some of the announcements we talked about here, they're not just Teams announcements. We talked about Outlook, we talked about Power Apps here, tasks, and To-Do, and Planner, and the Yammer. They're all kind of coming together into this ecosystem. And when you talk for all these things, how are your employees on it? Why would they want to pin a Power App, right? So if you already have Power Apps today, what is the value in pinning Power Apps? What are some of the apps you have today? And then educating those users on how to bring those together.
Absolutely. And again, this goes back to that connective tissue, keeping people from having to hop around in their experience. And as you look at this additional long list of announcements that we have, I mean, I hope that people, if anybody has any wonder whether or not Microsoft is investing in Teams and whether or not we're here to stay, I hope they stop wondering that. Because I have never been involved in a product at Microsoft in the 28 years I've been in this business that has had more investment, more focus, and more enthusiasm across Microsoft's divisions. So one of the things that our head of product, Graham Sheldon, likes to say is Teams doesn't belong to us anymore in Teams engineering. It belongs to the company. And it really does, right? And that's why we continue to do this deep investment. That's why you see a list of the types of announcements that we had and the depth of announcements, and why more is coming in devices, in meeting innovations, and vertical solutions, in our work for GCC, in all the government clouds. There's just a tremendous amount of momentum and investment in the product. And so, I would just say to everyone listening, keep your suggestions coming. They do make it into the product. We do listen to you. And join us on this journey, because this is an exciting time. Again, I said that word again, to be involved in this product because of what it can do for the employee experience. All right, bring it back to the people.
Awesome. And talking about, right, and part of people is communities, right? Yes. So what about communities? So
much.
There's with communities,
so much happening. I know, right? Then we're in the hashtag year of Yammer. It's so exciting. So cool. The thing about, this is another one of those myths that's out there, that Yammer was dead, or that it's Teams or Yammer. Nope, it's Teams and, right? Hashtag better together is something you'll see in my feeds quite a bit, because there are scenarios, especially in large organizations, where Yammer communities make the most sense. And you also want to provide a place where your community managers can collaborate and work together. And that is best done in Teams. So the smart thing to do is to bring it together. And that's what we've done with the new Yammer app, with the new redesign, with the renaming of groups to communities. We're really clarifying the scenarios where you should have communities of interest, large conversations, things of that nature in Yammer, and bring that inside of Teams. Right? And so we're happy to provide more clarity on this, because we know people were a little bit confused. We have a tendency to confuse people sometimes as we're driving this innovation, And people are asking me always, what tool should I use when? And my answer to that is always, what are you trying to accomplish? If you're trying to drive broad scale engagement across people who may not know each other around the world, especially if you're in a large organization, then that's what Yammer is for, right? And it really gives you that ability to host, of course, live events can be hosted inside either Teams or Yammer, but the Yammer experience for Q&A with those live events is an excellent one. And then Teams is then, of course, used to give, again, those community managers a place to collaborate and to create visibility for issues or conversations you might need to moderate. So, you know, Yammer is a fantastic complement. We complement Yammer from an engineering perspective, and Yammer complements us. So we are thrilled to be working with them more closely.
And as far as the people using Yammer, I think it's great to see. It was I guess there wasn't just a single announcement from Yammer. I think what I wanted to make sure we touch on here is that I think you let it off so nicely, is that Yammer is not dead. It's fine. It's alive and kicking, and I have a ton of customers that use it. And it's a very, very powerful tool, and it fits into the ecosystem, and it has its place in the ecosystem. It's not a what to use when, it's a why. And the investments, the kind of the announcements that they talked about this year really showed some of that, because there was an overall refresh in the UI.
Yes.
It is a completely new experience. So for the people who are not aware, Yammer was a purchase years ago, and it has been slowly merging more and more into the ecosystem in the proper areas. And the UI refresh here is now fully done with the Fluent design. So if you've heard of the Fluent design and the way that Office 365 is moving, Yammer is one of, to be honest, it's one of the first ones to really go fully in. And
yes.
The new UI is a fantastic looking UI. It meets a lot of the different criteria that we've seen from an adoption and an engagement standpoint. I think a really big thing to highlight is they're not called Yammer groups anymore. They're called Yammer communities.
That's right.
And you'll see it in this slide here, in this picture. You see what the new Yammer UI looks like. You see the white space and the separation. And when you see it live, you'll see the scrolling and kind of how it feels. It looks different and it feels different. And the aspect of communities is the change that's coming together. And it's being broken up into a couple different kind of sections, I would say. So the big one, I'd say, for me, it was the new UX. It was seeing what that looks like, seeing the people card inside of it, being able to favorite communities. And then you're also going to see, it's a smaller one, but I will say from the adoption standpoint, search on the suite header, it's going to be there for Yammer. So if you're familiar with Office 365 and Teams and the centralized search bar on top, that's coming to Yammer. Here, it's a big, it's kind of under the covers, but from an end user side, it's a pretty big change. When you get inside of some of the management for like the community managers, you actually can make your communities look a little bit better, or I shouldn't say better, just different, right? You can actually add different photos, pin posts up top. So some base community functionality that is now going to be part of that UI to really, when you're building a community, show people that this is my community or this is your community, and providing a little better awareness into it.
Yeah. Hey, Drew, just before we go on, I think there's a bit of confusion in the change between groups and communities. I'll give my opinion on it, and maybe Caruana and Drew can jump on as well. I think before there was a lot of confusion because we had Yammer groups, Office 365 groups, and then Yammer groups backed by Office 365 groups. And that caused a lot of confusion into when to use what. And also that added, when you talked about groups, it's like, okay, what kind of group are you talking about? So I think, at least from what I understood, and maybe you guys can correct me, the change to naming them Yammer communities did not bring any technical change. It's still Office 365 groups in the back. It just helps the when to use what, as companies use Yammer Teams for different scenarios. Am I correct?
Yes, you are
100%.
correct. Yeah, so Office 365 Groups is nothing more than an infrastructure element. It's not an experience. It's not something you want to quote unquote roll out. I know we told you that it was before, but it actually isn't. Office 365 Groups is really just the membership service that all of the workloads in Office 365 use to manage who are owners and who are members of a particular experience. And so what you want to think about is the user-facing client experience that people will be using. So they're either going to be using Yammer or they're going to be using Teams, or you're going to bring them together and people can get to Yammer from Teams, as some of the scenarios I'm talking about. But we changed that name to provide that kind of clarity. A Yammer community is the thing that people join to have conversations about a particular topic across a large organization, right? And yes, it's backed by an Office 365 group, which is really important for IT admins because now we can manage them all the same, right? We want to be able to manage and govern at that Office 365 group level. And there was another question I answered in the Q&A as well that goes to that governance question, and in the blog post that we'll share after this, we gave a governance talk at Ignite, and it talks about the kind of tiering and the way to approach this. But you know, I won't go into that now, but it's a little bit of an important thing to understand. But at the end of the day, like, what are you trying to do? This is why I always ask this question. Are you trying to drive a sense of community around a common topic across your entire company? Are you trying to work with a core team of people that are trying to work on a common goal? Right? What are you trying to accomplish? And then we can bring to you the right experience.
Awesome. Good question. No, that was great, and I think that's what I'm seeing as well, and I agree.
And just a quick follow-up question. Can we still create standalone Yammer communities?
Not in the future.
Okay.
No, and you wouldn't want to. This is the whole thing we don't really want people to do, right? Let's all move to the Office 365 group-backed experiences to simplify the life of our IT pros and admins. This goes into the category of love for IT pros, right? And having been an IT pro for most of my career, I will tell you that more love is needed to simplify the management experience inside Office 365. It is a complicated task, especially in larger organizations. And anything that falls outside of that Office 365 groups management capability is really challenging for those IT pros. And so really wanting to move away from that.
I agree. Again.
Yep, exactly. And oh, look, another snazzy slide. You have the nicest slides. I really like your slides. They're beautiful. I will be stealing them, just to let the entire audience know. I will be stealing Drew's slides. And, you know, because they bring together, you know, we're really trying to highlight these changes that are there. And there was a great question in the Q&A also about how to get started. This is why M365 Learning Pathways is important. This is why our Teams Live training is important. And if you're really just beginning, go to support.office.com and check out the great snackable trainings that are available out there. You know, and our tech community is always there for you. The Microsoft technical community that's being shown here, the second block, there's a forum for every product. So you can come and ask any question that you like in the Teams forum, in the Yammer forum, about Power BI, any technical question or even usage question that you have. And then I run the forum on driving adoption and best practices, how to roll things out, how to get people to use it, deployment questions, this sort of thing. There's myself and many other people inside Microsoft and throughout our MVP community like Vlad and Drew who are out there who are willing and able to answer your questions. So, you know, don't feel like you're going through this alone. You know, we are absolutely here to help you. I really appreciate when our MVPs do these sorts of webinars because we just want to get the word out that we are there and available to help you through the journey and understand how to best use these tools. So,
awesome.
Really important.
And thank you. So we're kind of at time, so I wanted to make sure we ended with some of, we're going to come back and we'll talk about swag here in a second. There are a couple slides that we did gloss over. There is one kind of talking about being a champion. We'll definitely make sure we send these back out to everyone. If you're not part of the champion team, or make the champion community, go do it. Go to that URL, join it. It's great for those meetings. So small plug there, but what's kind of coming up next. So we do have Ignite the Tour will be going on. So if you are joining us from a different country, different location, wherever you're at, a lot of the stuff we're talking about here is going to be hopefully coming to a city close to you. So go check it out. I know, Vlad, you'll be in Toronto, correct?
Yes, I'm speaking in Toronto, and I'm still waiting on a few others, but Toronto for sure.
And Paris was just last week, so there is no stopping this train. Jump on
It is
board.
the train. Yes, it is.
And Caroline, are you going to be do you have any Ignite the Tours planned on your
I
agenda right now?
do. I do. I'll be in DC. I'll be in several of them. I'm actually changing my travel schedule and confirming things right now. I will be home a little bit more than on the road in the next few months, but I will definitely be there in spirit. And we'll be
Awesome.
doing some Office 365 champion mixers at these different events, so stay tuned for that.
That's another nice little plug there for the champion thing, for the champion group. So next up, last one on our webinar series coming up in 2 days here with Antonia. We'll be talking all about security and compliance, a lot about some of the new MIP and updates, and especially as it relates to SharePoint and OneDrive. So that'll be a good one. If you haven't registered for that, please visit one of our blogs or check us on social. You'll see a link to it. But let's get to one of the good stuff here at the end. We do have a swag giveaway for the people, the wonderful attendees that we've had. So I think Vlad and Caruana take this one away.
Sure. So we're a bit over time, so some people left, but we still have 161 people on. So Caruana, you need to pick a number between 1 and 161.
Okay, I will pick 82.
Okay, 82 is George Dussenberry. So congratulations, George. I'll reach out to you by the end of the day to get your shipping address, and I'll get all of this shipped to you pretty soon. And I see that in the Q&A, we just got a woohoo. So congrats, George, and we'll get this to you really soon.
All right, and again, thank you, Caruana, for joining us on this wonderful little hour of Teams and Yammer.
Always happy to be with you both. Thank you, and thanks to everyone for attending. We're always here, and it's a fun times with the two of you.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.